going to record this session. Hello there. So I am Kate Bigelow. I'm the Assistant Director of the Garden Montessori. Today's parent education class is about early childhood development. And if some others join in as we move along, anyone can add any questions they have in the chat box. I do have a slides presentation today, so I'm going to go ahead and share my screen and we'll get started with that. Okay, so today's parent education class is going to be about early childhood development. We're going to be talking about schemas and positive discipline included in this section today as well. So when we're talking about stages of early learning, we're talking about children who fall under the category of early childhood. And early childhood is defined as the period from birth to 8 years old, and it's a time of growth with brain development at its peak. We can see some of the stages for early learning from birth to 8 years old on the chart on the right. Some of those stages of development we see there are reading, writing, music, letters, shapes and sounds, vocabulary, a sense of order, math patterns, and movement. Child development we view in the classroom through the context of social and emotional development, cognitive development, physical and motor development, and language and literacy development. I'm going to be speaking to you today about social emotional development, cognitive development, and physical motor development. In a special session coming up next month on the 17th of December, we'll have a whole presentation about language and literacy development. So tune into that if you're interested. Here we have included an early childhood developmental chart that shows the basic milestones based on the ages of a 1-year-old child, a 2-year-old child, and a 3-year-old child. The early childhood development chart is broken into those domains we spoke of: emotional development, social development, communication, language and literacy skills, physical development, and cognitive development. So we're going to go into a bit of detail on all of these different developmental factors. Early childhood developmental milestones. Before I get into these, I always like to say that when we're talking about developmental milestones, it's really important to keep in mind that this is just a guide. They're definitely just guidelines and not an arbitrary rule. It's really important, especially in our Montessori classrooms, that we're really following each child and recognizing that each child is going to meet these milestones at different times based on their sensitive periods. And we want to make sure that we're not assuming anything about our children and really just allowing them to develop at their own pace. So the first 4 years of the child's life are the most important period. During this time, they're growing physically, emotionally, cognitively, socially, and morally. So there's a variety of ways that you can get more information about early child developmental milestones that are more specific to the age of your child. All right, so let's go ahead and get into some social and emotional development. When we're talking about social and emotional, we can look at some of the developmental milestones that include things like any type of interaction or attachment. So at 2 months old, we're looking at babies who are smiling and looking at their caregiver. At 4 months old, they're beginning to play and develop an awareness of their surroundings. At 6 months old, they can begin to start differentiating between strangers and familiar faces, thus resulting at 9 months, they begin showing some of that stranger anxiety. We'll also talk more about separation anxiety coming up here. By the time your children are about a year old, they might have favorite people among the ones that are familiar to them. They may demonstrate anxiety around unfamiliar people, more of that stranger anxiety. So when we start looking at our 2 toddler age children, our 18 months to 2-year-olds, that's when they're beginning to assert their independence. That's when you're going to see frustrations based on their learning to communicate with others. As they get a little bit older, 3 and 4 years old, you start to see a wider range of emotions. You start to see a little bit more empathy, some spontaneity and caring and kindness towards others. And they begin to use words more successfully to communicate their needs. So those are some of the developmental guidelines that we see in children in the early childhood spectrum. Now, when we're talking about our youngest children, looking at infants, we're really talking a lot about attachment. So as we are learning more about social emotional development in our youngest children and infants, we're looking at those secure attachments as compared to insecure attachments. So attachment is the affectionate and reciprocal relationship between children and their caregivers. It includes physical and emotional closeness. Now there are 4 phases of attachment, and that's when we're looking at different ways that infants maintain closeness with their caregiver, the responsiveness infants have towards familiar figures, actively seeking out interactions and affection from their object of attachment, and then past toddlerhood, using a variety of behaviors to influence the object of their attachment to satisfy their needs. That's when we're looking, these types of attachments are where we're looking at stranger anxiety, which we discussed in the last slide, looking at milestones, and then separation anxiety, the fears that children will experience when a familiar person leaves or is about to leave. So there's a link here that I can reshare with you that gives some resources that you can use to promote social emotional learning at home. So that absolutely can be shared with this slideshow. Next, we're going to move into cognitive development. We know from all of our understanding that children's brains at this age are growing rapidly. There's just a great deal of learning happening and cognitive development. So when we're looking at cognitive development, we're talking about the process of using the senses to gather information about the world around them and mentally organizing it in a meaningful way. That is in relation to learning, which is a relatively permanent change in behavior resulting from experiences. When we're looking at brain development, of course, we're looking at different areas of the brain and different activities that we can do to help grow and learn in these specific areas. So in the frontal lobe and the prefrontal cortex, we are looking at thought, memory, and behavior, sorting objects, encouraging problem solving, giving choices, talking about plans can help students build concrete thinking and judgment in these areas during their early childhood growth frame. In the temporal lobe and the limbic system is where hearing and learning and emotions are happening. So that's where those attachment pieces are coming through, talking about emotions, experiencing emotions and joy and love. That's where the growth is happening there. Up in the parietal lobe, we're looking at language, talking, singing, reading, listening, responding, repetition of stories, and touch. So touching children, hugging, letting them explore the world around them, hands-on learning, a lot of the things you see in a Montessori classroom. Looking at the occipital lobe, we're going to be looking at visual processing there, surrounding our students with interesting things to look at. In a Montessori classroom, we're always looking at how we're preparing in the environment to be beautiful and inspiring for students. To ask our children to direct their own learning, especially our youngest students like toddlers, can be difficult if the environment isn't beautiful and appealing to the eye. Looking at the cerebellum, we're looking at letting children move around. That's balance and coordination, playing, running, jumping, swimming, playgrounds, all kinds of things like that. And then finally at the brainstem, we're looking at breathing, heart rate and temperature, emotional and physical safety. So there's, in a Montessori classroom, we talk about these timelines in the term using sensitive periods, which I went into a little bit more detail on one of our previous parent education classes on Montessori principles. So if you're interested in learning more about sensitive periods, you can watch that slide. It's recorded and available on our parent portal. Okay, looking at child brain development, that we're looking at ways that we can increase child brain development and encourage that positive growth and learning. In order to do that, we need good nutrition. We need students to have the ability to have stable moods and increase their ability to pay attention and improve their memory. And good nutrition and a healthy diet plays a really important role in that. We also, when we're looking at brain development, are once again talking about attachment. Loving and consistent caregiving leads to a brain that has the ability to learn and problem solve and have empathy for others. There are a variety of negative influences and positive influences on cognitive development in early childhood. Illness or injury can have an effect on a student's cognitive development. The prepared environment can either grow that cognitive development and add to it, or the lack thereof of a prepared environment. We're going to talk more coming up at another parent education slideshow about prepared environments. Tactile issues can result in stress for children. We can look at Reinforcement, either positive or negative, is affecting cognitive development. I already talked about nutrition. Sleep patterns can affect the way a child learns, both in school and at home. Any type of an outside stressor can affect the way a children's cognitively growing. For our youngest children, I'm sure you see it if you're a parent of a young child, any change of routine, anything that can affect the typical day-to-day activity can really influence a young child. And of course, abuse can affect the way any young child's brain is going to grow and develop. Ways that we can nurture cognitive development are by encouraging exploration in materials that students are interested in and meet their needs and abilities. We want to make sure that exploration is at their own pace. We'll never encourage or rush any children to meet expectations that they're not developmentally ready for. We can provide experiences that allow children to stimulate their curiosity and their imagination. That's what Montessori classrooms are looking to do through our hands-on experiences and our opportunities to grow. We want to foster those hands-on experiences and active exploration. We want to make sure that our children are in an environment where they can feel and touch and learn through all of those experiences that allows them to promote a logical analysis and understanding of the world. An example of that would be a science experiment. So we also always want to be encouraging our children to ask questions and providing them with a variety of opportunities to use language. I always say to saturate their environment with language, even for our youngest children. That leads me into a discussion of schemas. Now, schemas are patterns of repeatable behavior that can be seen in our child's play. I talk a lot in the parent and child classes about observe, observe, observe. Montessori teachers are constantly observing the students in their class, observing what they're interested in, observing what needs they have, observing what content they've mastered and where they still have room to grow. So we want to use those schemas to extend our students' patterns of behavior thinking, really build on what they already know and help them learn new things. And providing a prepared environment that supports that allows them to work in areas of their interest. So the schemas that we can recognize are a trajectory schema, which is how things move and respond. So an example of that would be throwing and catching. We can look at a transporting schema, which sounds exactly what it is, moving objects from place to place. That can be liquids or solids or anything, including cars and things like that. Enveloping is an interest in space and capacity. Peekaboo is an example of that. We have transforming, things changing form, cause and effect. Baking is a good example of that. Connection, putting things together and separating them, blocks, puzzles, things of that nature. Rotation, things that rotate, anything with wheels is a good example of that. Positioning, placing things in lines, patterns, or rows. Enclosing, any student that likes to be in tunnels or things like that. And then orientation, which is a desire to hang upside down and things of that nature. That wanting to hang upside down, that leads directly into what we are going to see in our youngest children during their physical and motor development stages. For our infants and toddlers, we're looking at perceptual development and motor development. So the major stages of motor development for infants and toddlers are basic reflexes in our first month of life. As they grow a little bit older, we're looking at the perfection of visual control, rolling over, reaching for objects. From 4 to 7 months, they're beginning to develop head and arm control, passing objects from hand to hand, sitting up straight, sitting up on their own. From 7 to 10 months, we're looking at trunk and hand control. So a thumb finger grasp and beginning to crawl. From 10 to 13 months, they begin to have control of their legs, feet, fingers, and thumb. That might be at the time where we're seeing walking or our first steps. And from 13 months to 2 years, they're beginning to perfect those mobility skills, running, walking up steps, walking sideways. And again, I say, as I mentioned before, please keep in mind that all babies vary greatly in their development. So any indicated age range is really just a guideline and not an absolute requirement. As our children get a little bit older, looking at our preschoolers, that perceptual development is seen as a shift in the dominance of the sensory systems they've been learning with as infants and toddlers into the more tactile and kinesthetic to the visual. We also see those preschoolers increase the communication between those systems and they begin working together as individual systems. In motor development in preschoolers, we're looking at two areas. Of course, fine motor development, which is refining the small muscles in the hands, fingers, and wrist. And gross motor development defines the refinement of the large muscles, arms, legs, and torso. Now, we are looking typically at a sequence of motor abilities and patterns. Preschool children usually show a progression of these motor skills. These motor characteristics can be based on some of the factors we saw when talking about cognitive development, and that's looking at genetics, nutrition, and health. All right, I'm going to take a minute just to make sure no one wanted to join us. Okay, so here I have some charts that demonstrate some fine motor development and gross motor development for children that are 2, 3, 4, and 5 years old. Of course, fine motor development, our youngest children, 2-year-olds, are looking at drawing a horizontal line through imitation, unbuttoning large buttons, possibly turning pages singly. Some 3-year-olds looking at fine motor development are coloring a picture in a general area, possibly completing 4 to 5 piece puzzles, or enjoys finger painting, pasting, and clay. Our 4-year-olds are looking at building in towers. They possibly are coloring within a 1/4 inch of the line. They can copy a ladder, and they can possibly pour milk from small pitchers and trace their own hand. Our 5-year-old children are wanting to write. They're printing their own name for the most part. They're drawing a person with 6 parts, and they might be able to write backwards from right to left. As far as gross motor development for our 2-year-olds, they can swing their arms when they're in a hurry. They run well, avoiding obstacles, and they can stand on toes momentarily. Our 3-year-olds can typically hop on one foot, can climb in and out and under, enjoy swings, and can kick a ball forcibly. Our 4-year-olds can walk upstairs without alternating their feet. They can typically somersault. They can pump swings while maintaining their balance, and they begin to bounce a ball and use a bat. And our 5-year-old children can stand on one foot with their eyes closed, can skip or gallop, ride a bike, dribble a ball, and kick a ball that's already rolling. Okay, so the progression of early childhood skills is typically seen on another sequence progression. We start with throwing, catching, stair climbing, climbing, hopping, jumping, and running. And that's for our 3, 4, and 5-year-olds. All right, so language and literacy development is included when we're talking about early childhood development, but it is such a large topic and a specific area of interest of mine. So we're going to be having a special parent education class next month designed just around this topic. All right, lastly, we're going to talk a little bit more about positive discipline and how we can relate that back to your child and how they're developing. So what is positive discipline? Positive discipline is a program developed that's based on previous work, and it's designed to teach young children to become responsible, respectful, and resourceful members of their communities. Now, positive discipline teaches children important social and life skills in a manner that's respectful and encouraging for both the children and adults. Now, recent research tells us that children are hardwired from birth to connect with others, and that children who feel a sense of connection to their community and family are less likely to misbehave. To be successful, contributing members of their community, children must learn the necessary social and life skills. So there are 5 criteria for positive discipline, the first of which is being kind and firm at the same time. Now, the goal behind this is being respectful and encouraging, maintaining kindness and firmness. The second goal of positive discipline is helping children feel a sense of belonging and significance. Are you making a connection with the children as you're working through this situation? Is the discipline you're using effective long-term? Now, punishment works on the short term, but can have negative long-term results. So when we're looking at discipline in our youngest children, we want to consider the long-term effects and the results in the short term. Positive discipline encourages us to teach valuable social and life skills to build good character. We're looking to build respect, concern for others, problem-solving abilities, accountability, contribution, and cooperation. These are valuable skills that even our youngest children can begin to build as they're working through these situations. And lastly, we want to invite children to discover how capable they are and always use their personal power in a way that's constructive. Now, these tools and concepts of positive discipline also include mutual respect, respecting children. It's our job as adults to model firmness by respecting them and the needs of the situation, and then modeling kindness by respecting the needs of our children. It's important when we're looking at positive discipline that we're identifying the belief behind the behavior. Effective discipline recognizes the reasons why kids do what they do, and we're really looking to change those beliefs rather than merely attempting to change the behavior. Effective communication and problem-solving skills are a concept behind positive discipline, and discipline that teaches. It's not punitive, it's not permissive. It's a growing opportunity. It's an experience that helps each party, both adults and children, grow. And the focus of positive discipline needs to be the solution, not the punishment. We're looking to encourage our children instead of praise. Encouragement notices effort and improvement, not just immediate successes, and helps our children build long-term self-esteem and empowerment. That's that really constructive feedback, really reinforcing children and encouraging them to understand right from wrong. So I kind of flew through that because there was, I'm going to stop my share in just a minute. Again, those upcoming sessions coming up are Montessori in the home that was rescheduled from last month. And then on December 17th is a language and literacy session. So I'm going to stop my share. I'm going to thank you, Maria, for joining me today. I
You're
did
welcome.
fly through that a little bit. Did you have any questions? Hi, kiddo.
Say hi, Mason. I
Hi,
think
Mason.
more on the discipline side. Of course, toddlers are in their area of trial and error. How much can I get away with? When should I listen and when should I not listen? Because that's the stage that they're in. And while I do encourage him to have his own opinion, even if it's not the right time for me to hear it, because sometimes we don't have the time, I still encourage it. A great example today was, it was potty time and his 30 minutes were up to go potty. And I began to, pull down his underwear, and he said, "No, Mom, don't touch." At that moment, I needed to accomplish something, which was for him to sit down before he had an accident. But he also had a breakthrough, which was respect my body. I don't want to be touched. So I respected that. And I'm like, okay. So I let go. I showed him that his words matter. But there's certain moments where, he'll react, not in the sense of touch, but just in the sense of like, "Mason, don't touch that." And it's like, well, I'm going to look at you and I'm going to continue to. And after multiple times saying, don't touch, eventually you get to a point where it's like, do not touch that. And I break my meditation, if you will, to
Sure.
keep my cool.
Our voice level raises, our tone might change, things like that.
Exactly. And I am trying to prevent getting to that point, because I want him to learn the first time versus eventually my mom's going to say it to the point where she's going to raise her voice. And then I guess I'll listen. I want to avoid doing that. But of course, I am also aware of the fact that he is too. And they call him terrible twos for a reason.
Wait till 3.
Well, he's between the two. He turns 3 in February. So now he's able to, first he had a speech delay, and now that he's able to use his words, he's very vocal. I'll say, "Mason, we have to go, we have to go to school. We have to get our shoes on. We have to get ready." No way. And he's he's very vocal about it. And I say, "Okay, I understand you don't want to go to school. Why don't you want to go to school?" And he'll think about it. He's like, and I guess he doesn't really have anything to say. So he'll like, "Okay." And like, "Where are my shoes?" And he'll do. But there's times where he really does push the limit. And it's like, at that point, is it still like, and especially for safety, at what point are I guess, where's the middle ground for that?
Sure, sure. No, that's a really good question. I totally understand. And the term we use in Montessori, and what I like to reiterate is freedom within limits. As the adults in the space, I used to tell my students, I would say, it's my job to keep you safe and help you learn. So if I am making a decision or helping you do something that you might not be your choice, it's because I'm doing one of those two things. And it's my responsibility in order to allow you to have freedom within this space and within this classroom,
Listen,
within
be
our,
careful. Don't touch that, Bubba. Example.
uh-huh.
Don't touch that. Because that's gonna fall on you, Bubba. That's not secure yet. You have to leave it here, okay? Is that better? Was it in your way? All right. Sorry. We fixed it. Phew. Sorry about that.
No, that's fine. No, that is a perfect example. And that was perfect. The only thing I was going to say in regards to that was, if the first time I give a recommendation, don't touch that. I'm always adding an explanation as to why. Don't touch that, because if you do, this and this it will fall on you, like you just said. So that can tend, adding that reasoning behind why we're giving the direction can also help encourage in more immediate compliance as compared to the kind of, oh, but I don't know, let's see if I can. So
Right.
that was going to be one of my recommendations, and it sounds like you're already doing that. So I would just continue that repetition of explaining to him, this is why I'm making this limit. Here's the limit, and this is why. So yeah,
Right.
here's the limit, and this is why.
I think our current one is like with our pets, there's moments where our cat is, she allows so much for him to do. And finally she'll get to a point where like, leave me alone. And I'll be like, okay, Mason, she's upset. She doesn't want to be touched. She doesn't want to play anymore. You have to let her be. And he'll continue to chase her. Mason, let her go, please. Mason, 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 Mason. And eventually I'm like, Mason, you need to stop touching her. But it's that point where I get to that point. I don't want to get to that point. I want to make my point clear, because I feel like if I constantly repeat, it will continue to get to where one time, two times is not enough. It's always going to be multiple times that I need to say something before he listens. I think that's going to become a habit for him, and I want to prevent that habit.
Sure. Another suggestion I would have there is, after one or two times saying it, don't leave the offering a redirection rather than maybe a punishment. Mason, I can see that you really want to chase the cat right now, but right now the cat is telling you the cat does not want to play. Instead, let's play with your so-and-so and so, getting him involved in another activity. Sometimes that can be beneficial, rather than kind of becoming feeling like that broken record type of behavior is happening. So that would be one recommendation that can, help break the pattern before you're getting to that point. I know sometimes that's not an option. You might be busy, you might be doing something else, you might be catering to someone else, or something like that. So with our youngest children, it really is just them trying to feel out their environment. And like you said, when we first started speaking, is as how far can I go? How far can I stretch this? And sometimes that can be frustrating, and just continued modeling, and explanations as to why it's our responsibilities, as adults, to set the limits within that space.
Right.
So,
and I think for me, it's a little frustrating because I go through all of, the steps, on how to keep your cool, how to parent, and more like what's aligned with Montessori. And then my husband comes, it's like, Mason, don't. And he's like, okay, Daddy. But here I go through all the steps and he just refuses to listen. So sometimes it's a bit confusing as to like, does it really matter?
I'm going to say something that I've read in past and just talking about, that can sometimes our students, I'll sometimes get, well, why are they so well behaved at school? They never throw temper tantrums for you. They never, and it's because with certain attachments, they feel extra secure. So they're
Right.
allowed to let those feelings go, and they also feel more comfortable to push those limits. So because of you having such a secure attachment with Mason, he feels safer being able to push the limits with you as compared to your husband. Not that he does not have a secure attachment with your husband. That's not what I'm saying at all. But
Oh, no,
that's
no, no. Of
safety. That's
course.
actually a sign of a secure attachment, the safety, and that he knows that he can stretch those limits a little bit more, because the bond that you have, the connection that's there, is so strongly established that it will still be there despite him stretching it in some of those limits. So that's actually
Right.
a sign of attachment, which is interesting, because it seems like, why does he listen better to my husband instead of me? But it's actually an attachment sign.
Oh, it's so it's basically the opposite because he has a great, and it makes sense. I mean, I'm with him all day, while husband goes to work, so it makes sense. But I mean, it does, as in the moment, it makes you wonder, like, why do I even try? I guess I'll just do like dad because he listens to dad's method better than mom's method. But yeah, okay, so I guess the redirecting part is what I'm falling short on. And like you said, it's because sometimes depending on, you have people over, you can't just be like, excuse
Mhm.
me, I'm gonna go play with them for 5-10 minutes. You just can't
Exactly.
do
Yeah.
that.
So that obviously is within reason. And then sometimes, even looking at sometimes there, we definitely need to give ourselves grace, because there's a difference between, losing our temper and yelling and being firm. So, if you're getting to the point of losing it's okay to be, after repeated requests, to get to the point where you're being firm and clear, and direct, and that can sometimes be strict, but it's important. It's okay, and it's important to be firm.
Okay. And the second one, and I don't know how much time we have, but I don't want to keep you here because I could keep you here all day. The second one is hitting. He's starting to want to hit where it's funny to him and it's a form of
Mhm.
play for him. Um, and the last time that happened, a couple of the neighbor girls were here. They were playing with him in his playroom, and I want to say that he was overstimulated. And so my solution was, okay, I can't take you out of the environment because this is your home. So I said, to the girls, hey, girls, I think he's gonna need a break. So maybe we can try to play tomorrow. So I, had the girls go home, and he was a little bit heartbroken because they left. Um, and of course, I said, okay, let's just relax for a little bit, But there's occasions where you just can't do that. Like when I try to explain to him hitting is not okay, he
Mhm.
laughs. It's funny because for him it's a form of play. It's like, I'm assuming, like cat and mouse. He
Mhm.
doesn't comprehend that, he's hurting somebody. Um, Even though he did make somebody cry. He doesn't get that. How do you redirect the hitting part? Or is that just a phase that they're gonna go through no matter what?
All of those things, yes, it's a very common behavior. Not only the lashing out physically, whether that be hitting, sometimes we see it in the form of biting, things like that is a very common reaction for our youngest children, because they're still growing that language. Your perception of him being overstimulated was probably accurate. It was probably based on his inability to communicate fully what was happening in that space, and so his body had to get some of that out, and that was the best way he could do it, because he couldn't find all of the language that he needed to do it that way. And so it is a really common behavior for our youngest children because of that. Not that they don't have some language, but in a situation like that, in an overstimulating situation, in a conflict-based situation, and in an emotional situation, they might not always have the language or the ability to pull the language they need immediately to meet the needs of that situation. Whereas making a hand or reaching it, that's faster and more immediate, to pull out that language that they're still growing to meet the needs of the situation. So that it's really a common behavior in the classroom. It's a common occurrence if there's two students who are looking to use the same material. If a student removes the material from someone else's space, with our toddlers, there is a lot of those instances. They're typically not maliciously, by intent. And the language we use in the classroom is, "Oh, my friend, I can see that made you feel upset. We need to use gentle gentle hands with our friends. Oh, I can see that that made you feel upset. This is what you can say. You can say, I don't like it when you take my block. I don't like it when you use my space. Model, even if they can't repeat it back to you, that's okay. You're still modeling how to solve the problem. You're still modeling the language that later on they'll need, so they're not reaching out and hitting. You can't stop it from happening in the moment, but after the situation, it's that modeling and that guidance. Oh, we need to use gentle hands with our friends. I see that you're honoring those feelings. I see that you're feeling upset because so and so happened. We can tell them so and so and so. And again, your child, Mason's probably not going to say that to the child, but we're going to, all those experiences can help us as model that. So it's just that intervention and that modeling when that's happening. And as
Okay.
far as the laughing upon hitting, that's typically just because somewhere at some time that happened and a reaction was given. Someone got hit, someone hit someone else laughed. So it's just looking to get that same reaction out of someone. Again, not malicious in intention, and just reminders there again, that modeling, or, oh, it makes me feel sad when your body hits my body. It makes me feel sad when you hit others. That can really hurt them. Things like that. Just bringing that back to the true feelings behind that, and modeling that again. A lot of the behavior that's physical is going to be prevented and explained through modeling and dialogue through conflict resolution.
Okay.
Does that answer your question a little bit?
I mean, yeah, no, it does. And that's what because I kind of figured that just as much when, when I separated him and I said, okay, I think maybe you need a break, he calmed down. I mean, sometimes he even does it with our dog or our cat, where he just wants. So I tell my husband, I'm like, that's kind of like, I don't know, should I be worried that he likes to harm our pets? Like he likes to run around chasing them, and like sometimes he'll try to kick or like pull their hair. And I understand that sometimes he doesn't understand, like the amount of like what to do with his overstimulation of. So it's confusing at times, but I can work with that at home. But when it comes to other kids, that's when it becomes like, okay, now you're hurting another child. Like we can't do that, Mason, and with him going to, school now, he learns a lot of positive, but then a lot of negative comes with it, like
That's true.
he never said the word mine, and now he knows the word mine.
Mm-hmm.
And not wanting to share, which before he never cared. In fact, he used to just bring toys to everybody, like, here, you want to play with this? And then after going to, Montessori now, to the garden, now he's like, nope, this is mine, mine. He just goes around saying mine, mine, mine for everything. Which is in a way good and bad. There's pros and cons to him going to school, but it's sometimes difficult as a parent, because it's like, okay, that's a curveball. I was not expecting you to not sharing anymore, or I wasn't expecting you to hit, because that wasn't behavior that we saw at home, or behavior that he sees at home. So it was just a bit, yeah, it was a curveball for us at home.
Sure. I can completely understand that. And it really is a common behavior for young children. So like I said, typically it is resulting from just overstimulation and that lack of language and ability to share those feelings verbally, that they're having and are happening. Because we talked about brain development. The brain develops, and emotions and those feelings happen so much more quickly than all of our language, our oral language comes, and our ability to share that. So it is really a common practice, but I can absolutely understand the surprise. So not only with the hitting behavior, but even starting to recognize, kind of taking ownership over materials and things. As they get a little bit older, they really start to recognize kind of their place in the world, and that different people have different things, and that I really like this, and there is a chance that somebody else could have it or take it. And that does come from the interactions that they're having at school, because they're just learning how to have social interactions. Our youngest children, our toddlers, are just getting that first introduction to being a social being and being out there in the world, and what happens, the give and take between others. So that's where we can really, in the classroom specifically, use more of that positive discipline modeling, because we really are just trying to build their social social abilities and really truly turn them into citizens. But how that reflects in the home definitely can be a surprise to mom and dad.
Yeah.
So
No, and I mean, he's so clever. I mean, there's moments where I was like, Mason, we don't touch this because this is mommy's. He goes, no, no, mine. No, no, mine. He's telling me like you're not allowed to say it's mine because I told him you can't. You have to share, and he says, "Mom, share." I'm like, "Oh, you got me so good, you little clever guy." You know, he's so witty, so witty. I'm like, oh, he's too smart for his own good sometimes, and he puts me in my place where like, okay, I don't know what to say to you now.
oh yeah, and that will probably only continue as he grows more language and starts to get a little bit older.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, we're like I said, we're going as he learns more and as he gets more clever. We're just going with the flow. But what you recommended was very helpful. Give me just a second. Somebody's knocking on my front door. Never mind. Sorry about that. I thought somebody was at my front door.
No, that's okay. And I can probably pull, we have a lending library. I'm not sure if you're aware, the garden has a lending library available for parents. And I can probably pull some texts out of there for you to look over that can give a little bit more information in more detail than I could today. And then we can absolutely chat more if if you implement some of those suggestions. Let me know how that's working for you, and we can always try something different if that's not working.
Oh, thank you. I would really appreciate it. I'm always open and I'm always willing to learn and I'm always willing to read anything that's going to be helpful. I mean, obviously not everything is applicable because every child is their own little world, but I mean, I've came across some really good materials that have helped me, which is how I learned to handle that day that he hit someone. And, I learned to quickly analyze the situation and said, okay, clearly he's overstimulated and he needs a break. Which is why I handled it the way that I did. So I'm really grateful for, a lot of the material and things that I come across because parenting is really something you learn from your own parents. And sometimes they're not the greatest example. And when you have your own kids, you're like, wait a minute. Okay. Now I have to be a parent myself, but my examples weren't great. So like, where do I even begin? Right. So, I mean, reading is what's been helpful.
You'll grow with your child. I've heard that before too. As your child grows and learns, you grow and learn as a parent. So as Mason develops and learns and grows new skills and starts demonstrating new behaviors, you'll learn and grow new skills as a parent to deal with those behaviors and take them on. So I absolutely could get some more references for you. The lending library is a really valuable resource for all of our families at the garden. So I can absolutely pull some stuff out for you, and then we can absolutely chat again. I do actually have to pick up a friend from the airport today. So if we, I'd love some more, some feedback though, how those suggestions are going over the next few weeks, talking after the holiday season is a great time to implement some new strategies for behavior because you're spending a lot of time together and you're taking on some new situations. Family might be coming over, you might be going somewhere else. So this might be a really good time to start working on some of those things because you're going to be encountering some new situations during the holidays.
Oh yeah, and I'm ready. I try to my husband thinks it's kind of silly sometimes, but I literally take notes of behavior or things that we know that we need to work on or things that I know that we need to even work on with family because we're trying to teach him where when he says no, that means no. You need to let him go. He needs to know that his voice has power, and when he says don't do this or I don't want this, I want him to be respected as well. Even though he's only 2, we don't think about that, but I'm actually looking forward for the holidays because of that too. But yeah, please go and take care of what you need to take care of. I really do appreciate it. If you just want to send me that information, and how do I pick them up? Do I just request them with Miss Emily?
Yep, you can request them from Miss Emily. I have a title in mind actually right now. It's called Beyond behaviors, actually. So I might just pull that out and have, there's like a log but since parents aren't coming in and out of the building, we have to do it anyway. So basically there's just a bookshelf where it would be by Miss Emily's classroom. And then you would just sign your name out on the log and the date you took it. And then when you brought it back, you just sign it back in. I'll go
Gotcha.
ahead
Okay.
and just bring it out to you at drop off on Monday, if that's okay. And I'll just
Okay.
write your name down and bring that out for you. Anything else I might see, I'll just bring out for you. And there's no time, so you can have it as long as you would like.
Okay, perfect. Well, thank you. I appreciate it.
Of course, it's thanks for being the one to join today.
Thank you.
I appreciate it.
It kind of worked out in my favor that I was the only one. I got to chat with you a
Yeah,
little more. And all of those the PDFs, I'm assuming that were on there, will they be somewhere that I can just like print them out so I can actually read over them with my husband?
Yes. What I'll have Ellen do, I'm sure there's a way to do it. I don't upload anything to the website. Ellen does all of that. So what I'll do is I'll share those with her and have her upload them along with the video. So in the parent portal where the parent education is, I'll have her put those right in there.
Okay, perfect. Well,
I
thank you so
also
much.
think in that same section in the parent portal, there's a list of titles that are in the lending library.
Oh, good to know. Okay.
And that
I
is
must have
password
already
protected.
come across them. I just don't remember.
Okay, yeah. So
Okay.
that's a great, so I'll have her share them there with the recorded session.
Awesome. Thank you so much.
Of course. Thank you. Have a great weekend.
Bye. Likewise.
Bye-bye.
Bye.